In this video, I'm going to share the 7 lessons that have changed my life and shaped me, not just as a therapist, but as a person trying to figure it out like everyone else. Lessons that came from sitting across from people in their most uncomfortable, difficult, and honest moments. And lessons that also came from my own failures, relationships, mistakes, frustrations, and breakdowns too. So let's get into it. So lesson number 1, discomfort is the only way. The most common question I've heard in therapy is some version of, how do I make this feeling stop? And I get it, discomfort is a horrible feeling to experience. Nobody wakes up thinking, oh, I'd love to be anxious today. And no one enjoys the nauseating mix of fear and shame that sits in your stomach when life hits you where it hurts. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Discomfort isn't the barrier, it's the doorway. Think of it like this. If the gym never hurt, your muscles would never grow. If vulnerability never stung, intimacy and connection would be meaningless. If fear didn't exist, courage wouldn't either. Most people treat discomfort like an emergency alarm, a signal to escape. But in therapy, discomfort is more like a compass. It points directly at what matters. When you feel jealous, there's a wound underneath. When you feel insecure, there's a story you've been living inside for years. When you panic, there's an experience your brain never got to process. You can cope with discomfort temporarily through breathing, grounding, tools, distractions, and those help. They are not useless. They are things we actively advise throughout therapy, but they don't take you through the doorway. What takes you through is staying long enough to ask, what is this trying to teach me and show me? It doesn't feel heroic in the moment. It feels miserable, confusing, embarrassing almost. But that's where you change. So if you're uncomfortable right now and it feels like you're failing, know this, you're on the right path. The people who grow aren't the ones who avoid discomfort. They're the ones who let discomfort shape them instead of scare them. Lesson number 2, progress isn't linear and it never will be. Growth is messy. You have a breakthrough session, you journal for a week, you meditate, you feel lighter, you think, maybe I'm finally getting somewhere. And then your brain blindsides you with a panic spiral or an old habit you swore you'd outgrown. And you think, what is wrong with me in this moment? The answer is nothing. That relapse moment, that dip, that is the real work. In fact, it's one of the more important moments in therapy. It's a moment where you get to further instill the new you and the lessons you've learned. If it stayed easy, the lessons wouldn't stick. So remember, growth is a roller coaster and will naturally have peaks and troughs. You will revisit the same lesson multiple times. Not because you're failing, but because each time you face it with a slightly upgraded version of you, a slightly new perspective. So here's a metaphor I give to clients. Imagine walking up a spiral staircase. You'll keep passing the same window again and again, but each time you're a floor higher. So when you revisit an old fear, you're not regressing, you're reinforcing. Your brain is saying, we're strong enough now to face this with less panic than last time. Most people quit in the dip. They think backsliding is failure, but actually the dip is where your new wiring happens. Progress is the decision you make after the fall, not before it. So if you're in a low point right now, don't write a story about who you are based on a bad week. This is the messy middle where everything actually changes. Lesson number 3, you won't only think your way out, you have to feel. This one was difficult for me because I'm a thinker. I believed that if I could just understand myself, really understand the why, then I could heal. I read every book, I learned every theory, I could analyze my own patterns like a case study, and yet I was still repeating them. Why? Because analysis doesn't replace emotion. You can know the story without ever feeling it. Talking about your childhood is not the same as actually grieving it. Explaining your patterns is not the same as releasing them. Understanding why you numb yourself isn't the same as letting yourself feel the pain you're numbing. Healing starts when you stop using thinking as protection. So here's a small shift that changes everything. Instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, say this instead. I'm having the thought that I'm terrible at this. That gap is everything. It creates space between you and the thought. Your brain stops treating every narrative like a fact. And in that space, emotion has room to come through. Feeling is the medicine, thinking is the map, and you need both. But the map without the journey won't get you anywhere. Lesson number 4, relationships won't save you, they reveal you. Love exposes who you are underneath. Every generation has a story about love. Our generation's story is find someone who completes you, someone who fits perfectly into your missing pieces, someone who heals your insecurity, calms your anxiety, makes you whole. But that's not love, that's outsourcing. A relationship doesn't fix your unworthiness, it highlights it. If you don't feel lovable alone, you'll question your worth in a relationship. If you don't know how to set boundaries by yourself, you'll collapse into someone else's needs the moment you fall in love. Love shines a light on the parts you've been hiding from. I've seen people leave a relationship thinking, I need someone more stable, when the real truth was, I need to become someone who can handle stability. Two people taking responsibility for themselves together, that's what love is. Not two halves completing each other, two wholes sharing the journey. So the question is not, do they fix me? The question is, who am I becoming when I'm with them? If the answer is smaller, quieter, scared, exhausted, that's a sign and is problematic. If the answer is braver, kinder, calmer, and more honest, that's also a sign, but it's a better one. Relationships don't save you. They show you the work you still have to do. That's lesson number 5. Boundaries don't push people away. They teach them how to stay. I used to believe that saying no meant hurting someone, that walking away meant I'd failed the relationship, that silence meant conflict and conflict meant danger. But boundaries aren't a threat. They're an invitation. A boundary says, this is how I can stay connected to you without betraying myself. Boundaries do not end relationships. A lack of boundaries does. Without them, you disappear into the other person. You slowly abandon your needs and you tiptoe around their expectations. And eventually, guess what? You will resent them. So when someone says, I don't want to hurt them, what they often mean is, I don't want to sit with the discomfort of the reaction. That's not love, that's avoidance. So boundaries teach people the rules of closeness, not as a punishment, but as structure. The people who love you will thank you for it. The people who only loved your compliance will leave. Either way, the boundary revealed the truth of the situation. A boundary is not a wall, it's a bridge with clear edges. And lesson number 6, healing isn't about removing problems, it's about becoming someone who can face the problems. Remember, life doesn't get easier, you get stronger. There's a fantasy we all secretly carry. One day, I'll be healed enough that nothing hurts. The day where anxiety disappears, where we stop caring what people think, where life is clean, stable, predictable. But healing is not a finish line. In fact, the further you go, the deeper life gets. New levels of growth bring new versions of struggle. You get the relationship you wanted, and now intimacy is terrifying. You get the career you dreamed of, and now pressure is overwhelming. You learn to love yourself, and now you have to maintain it through real-world chaos. Healing does not eliminate difficulty. It redesigns your identity in difficulty. So instead of asking, when will I stop struggling? Ask yourself this: who am I becoming through the struggle? People who heal don't avoid life. They engage with it, but differently. They know how to regulate their nervous system under stress. They know how to communicate without collapsing, and they know how to name their needs without shame. Healing is about becoming a person who can navigate the storms, not someone who never sees the rain again. And lesson number 7, don't take yourself so seriously, it kills your joy. Humor is medicine. This is the one I wish I learned earlier. The world is chaotic, life is heavy, every day throws a new problem at you, sometimes 3. And maybe people lose their joy, not because of the problems themselves, but because they treat every moment as a verdict. Every mistake becomes a character flaw. Every bad mood becomes a life diagnosis. Every argument becomes proof they're unlovable. One of the most beautiful things I've seen in therapy is this. In someone's darkest moment, sometimes they laugh. Not because they're mocking their pain, but because humor is how humans stay human. You can be sobbing about heartbreak and still make a joke about how embarrassing it is to cry over someone you swore you were done with 2 weeks ago. Humor doesn't erase the pain. It gives you just enough distance to actually breathe. So try this. Whatever is stressing you right now, zoom out for a moment. Turn it into a ridiculous scene in a movie. Give your inner critic a stupid accent. Imagine your lowest moment as an episode of a cringe comedy. You're not a robot, you're a messy, brilliant, ridiculous human being. and your seriousness might be the very thing crushing your joy. If there's a way I can quickly summarize today's episode, it's this. If you're in discomfort, it's a doorway. If you're in a dip, it's part of the path. If you're thinking too much, try feeling. If your relationship hurts, look inwards first. If you're afraid to set boundaries, do it anyway. If you're waiting for life to get easy, shift your identity instead. And if you're taking yourself too seriously, have a laugh. Please laugh. Because the truth is, healing isn't becoming perfect, it's becoming more yourself. So comment below which lesson you'll take away from today's video. And of course, if you found this video useful, please do consider subscribing. Here at the Awaken channel, we don't just talk, we give real world actionable guidance based on thousands of successful therapy sessions and seeing what actually works for real people. As always, I've been Jack. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you at the next one.